South Korean Prime Minister Lee Nak-yon has embarked on a trip to Japan to attend the enthronement ceremony of Japanese Emperor Naruhito. The most anticipated agenda during his three-day visit is a one-on-one with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, which will take place on Thursday. Today, we go in-depth into whether Prime Minister Lee will find a much-needed breakthrough to take bilateral ties a step forward through his trip. For that, Chairman of the East Asia Cultural Project, Kim Sang-woo, joins me in the studio today. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
So there was a lot of speculation over whether who would go and whether South Korean government was going to dispatch a representative to attend the ceremony today. Prime Minister Lee Nak-yon is known for his extensive ties with Japanese officials. What significance does Lee's visit have, and the fact that President Moon Jae-in didn't go himself, especially given the current situation that the bilateral countries are in at the moment?
I think Prime Minister Lee is the best choice to make under the circumstances. His long relationship with Japan, he was the Tokyo correspondent for Donga Daily. He even covered the coronation of the Emperor Akihito 29 years ago. So he has an extensive relationship with Japan and knowledge. And also he is very much of a listener as well. So under the circumstances, President Moon's visit was not possible because there is no changed position regarding the forced labor issues on both sides. So therefore, if he went, then it would be a disaster because they would not have anything to agree upon. So I think under the circumstances, a messenger bearing the letter from President Moon, which will be accepted, I'm sure, with welcome. So at the moment, we hope to see that there will be some progress.
So whether the Prime Minister's visit is able to bring about a breakthrough to the strained ties between the two will likely more or less determine the success of his trip. Now, before we delve into that, the enthronement ceremony of Emperor Naruhito took place earlier today. What changes, if any, will there be to Seoul-Tokyo relations? Will Naruhito's views on histories have any impact?
I hope so. In the long term, I know that he is, like his father, promoting peace. And he supports the constitution, the current constitution, which is against what Prime Minister Abe wants. He wants to amend the constitutions so that it will become a country that can engage in war. So this is something that the emperor, the new emperor, is against, but we have to understand that we are now looking at a country that is very different. Japan has changed since the so-called the lost 20 years, where Japanese people have lost a lot of confidence in themselves. At the same time, the ascendance of China as an economic and military power within East Asia has also made some impact on the Japanese people's attitude. And also a North Korea that has nuclear weapons so close to Japan is also considered a threat. So in other words, the Japanese people's support for Prime Minister Abe's strong Japan agenda is not something that is unexpected if we understand the mentality of the Japanese people at present. But as a neighboring country, of course, this is not a very welcoming situation.
So we will have to see on that. It's without a doubt that the highlight of Prime Minister Lee Nak-yon's trip will be with his sit-down with Prime Minister Shinzo Abe from Japan. Now, it's the first high-level meeting in about a year, and it comes after Seoul Supreme Court made the ruling that Japanese companies compensate Korean victims of forced labor during its colonial rule. Now, the two sides have long stressed the need for dialogue, and finally a date has been set. The talks are only expected to last about 10 to 20 minutes, though, but do you think holding such talks, even though it's not in depth, is a positive signal?
Well, it's positive in the sense that at least they are both willing to sit down. But having said that, the sit-down meeting of 10 minutes plus some more minutes is just a formality. But it's a symbol that there will be future talks. So if Prime Minister's visit will bring about a possibility of more dialogue between all sectors of Japanese government and Korean government, then there is a possibility of finding a solution for the current issue that has created this kind of discrepancy between the two countries. But we have to understand, once again, it's not just the forced labor issue that has created this situation. It had been building up some years back, 7 years ago. So there are numerous issues at hand at the time. So when you look at the final outcome, which was the forced labor ruling by the Supreme Court, but you have to also understand that there were other previous issues that brought about as a result, and it's a combination of all these issues that has now created this kind of situation. I think what we need to do is to seriously consider, on our part, we have to consider what the Japanese side is wanting, and for the part of Japan, they also have to understand what the historical issues of the past means to Korea and Koreans. So if there is some kind of way of finding a middle ground for that, then I think there's a possibility of progress. But just a visit by Prime Minister Lee Nak-yon is not going to resolve the issue at hand.
So it is going to take a bit of time to sort it out because, like you said, the two countries have a lot of issues at stake to deal with. Now, the recent souring of relations was triggered initially by the court ruling last year, and the two sides will have to work around their differences. Do you think in any way it will be brought up during their short talks?
I'm sure that there will be some discussion concerning the issue, but I don't think it will go in depth. What they will say is that let us try to resolve this issue through mutually acceptable ways. So that means that we need to have further dialogue and further talks. Working level talks are very necessary, and I know that the foreign ministry, the two countries' foreign ministries are working very hard on that as well. So the good thing is that the two sides have intentions to improve and to resolve this problem. So that is the good intention, but it's going to be a long-term thing. I think we have to separate the issues at hand. One is the Jisomia thing, and the other is this forced labor issue as well. So we understand that the Japan government or Prime Minister Abe will not accept anything to do with Japanese companies paying compensation, because he believes that the 1965 agreement resolved all that. So he's not going to budge on that. How can we try to overcome that part is going to be the task at hand.
Now, besides historical disputes, the tensions have also intensified into the areas of trade. But contrary to earlier expectations, the negative impact on South Korea hasn't been that big. It's been minimal. But what sort of response do you think Japan will show over the recent trade spat?
Well, I think that it's too early to assess which side is suffering more, because as far as I understand, the so-called suffering that Japanese economy is having is because of less Koreans are visiting Japan. Almost no Koreans are actually visiting Japan during the beginning of this dispute. But having said that, if the Japanese government really starts to implement its trade restrictions on Korea in terms of semiconductor or automobile or heavy machinery, parts, components, materials, then the devastating effect it will have on Korean economy is almost impossible to assess at the moment. But it will also have an impact on the world economy. Therefore, I think that criticism towards Prime Minister Abe by the global community is that he has set a very bad precedent of using economic issues to resolve historical and diplomatic issues. So if that point comes, I think the international community will condemn Japan's actions. So I think there is room for, therefore there is room for reaching a settlement of this issue.
So it first started with 3 key materials, and then it's removed South Korea from its trade whitelist. Now, while bilateral ties were turning for the worse, South Korea also took action and decided to pull out of their military intel sharing agreement known as JSOMIA. Now, that pact expires next month. Do you think there will be discussions on this in the near future between the two sides?
Unfortunately, the impact on Japan by withdrawing from JSOMIA is not as much as the effect it had on actually angering the US, because JSOMIA itself was the initiative of the US to have the trilateral security alliance intact and very actively engaged. But having actually using that card as a retaliation against Japan was not, in my opinion, the best option that the Korean government can choose. So therefore, I think they have to really find a way to restore JSOMIA, because it's going to, and gain the confidence of the US, because the US is pressuring Korea from all angles underneath, under the current, for Korea to restore it. So it's going to be difficult for Korea to just ignore and let it expire by next month. So they have to find a way of not losing face, but at the same time trying to restore it back to its original condition.
So at the moment, all eyes will be on Thursday's meeting between Prime Minister Lee Nak-yon as well as Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Now, during that meeting, Prime Minister Lee Nak-yon is expected to deliver a letter on behalf of President Moon Jae-in, and attention is on whether this may lead to a summit between President Moon and Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Now, the two are expected to be under the same roof next month as they attend international conferences in Thailand and Chile. Do you see a possible summit between the two countries?
Well, it all depends actually on, as I said before, to have a summit, there has to be a understanding that they will reach some kind of an agreement. But with the very strong positions that both Prime Minister Abe and President Moon has taken against this forced labor issue, is going to make it difficult to have a summit. And if you have a summit without trying to reach some kind of agreement, then it will be the worst case scenario, because summit is the final version. I mean, if they express their positions and do not reach an agreement, and then the summit is complete, then there's no way out. So having a summit is important, but reaching some kind of understanding and the possibility of resolving the issues at hand is more important. And the working level people has to work very hard to try to find a solution as early as possible.
So hopefully Prime Minister Lee Nak-yon's trip will be the start of more meetings or working level talks between the two sides.
That I am sure of.
Thank you for your insights today.
Thank you.